It's loading. Give it just a minute. Okay, and we're live.
Make sure captions are on, please.
All right, captions should be on. Judge, we're ready when you're ready to start.
Okay, I'm ready.
We are live, Judge.
All right, thank you, members. Welcome everyone to this special meeting of the State Democratic Executive Committee, which I am now calling to order. Okay, I would ask at this time that Secretary Lee Forbes please call the roll.
Thank you. Gilberto Hinojosa, Chairman.
Present.
Shea Wyrick Cathy, Vice Chair. Kendall Scudder, Vice Chair for Finance. Otis F. Bagaru, Treasurer.
Here.
Lee Forbes, Secretary, here. Donna Beth McCormick, Sergeant at Arms. Marty Galando, Parliamentarian. Hello. Dina Tarlet. Okay, George Nasser, Parliamentarian.
Here.
Ben Dixon, SD1. Ben. Sabrina Robertson, SD1.
She's joining right now, Madam Secretary, and our Vice Chair, Shea Wyrick Cathy, is also here.
Okay. Kristen Schamberger, SD2.
Nathan Clark, proxy.
Okay. Nathan Clark, SD2.
Here.
Sharon Berry, SD3.
Sabrina Robertson, SD1 is here. I'm sorry.
Got it. Sharon Berry, SD3. Michael Fladmark, SD3.
I'm here. I'm Michael Fladmark's proxy, Carolyn Salter. I was having trouble. Sorry.
Okay. Mary Ham, SD4.
Sustaining member / trailblazer.
Chris Powell, SD4.
Sustaining member.
Eric Hankey, SD5.
Sustaining member here and also proxy for Judy Leunis. I'll save you the trouble.
Okay, thank you. Alan Jamel, SD6. Linda Jamel, SD6.
Both of them are having trouble with their links, Madam Secretary. They should be in shortly.
Okay. Glenn Ention, SD7.
Present.
Angela Williams, SD7.
Present.
Ann Backus, SD8.
Present.
Frederick Nickens, SD8.
Present.
Diana Branson, SD9.
Sorry,
Carol,
present.
Carol Parker, SD9.
Proxy. Diana Branson.
Okay. Mark Green, SD10. Myra Mills Sherhart, SD10.
Present.
Cynthia Cottle Dean, SD11.
Present. Abortion is healthcare, y'all.
C. John Young, SD11.
Present.
David Griggs, SD12.
Present. Sustaining member.
Sharon Hirsch, SD12.
Sustaining member.
Tony Middleton Lewis, SD13.
Sustaining member.
Dylan Russell, SD13.
Sustaining member.
Colby Duhan, SD 14.
Proxy, Ash Hall, SD 14.
Okay, Ash Hall, SD 14.
Present.
Linda Castro, SD 15.
Present.
Michael Hamilton, SD 15.
Present.
Susan Bradley, SD 16.
Sustaining member.
Michael McPhail, SD 16. Jazz SD 17.
Sustaining member.
Cheryl Novak, SD 17. Jennifer Cantu, SD 18. Cecil Webster, SD 18.
Trailblazer Ambassador, present.
Nicolette Oriente, SD 19.
Present.
Joshua Garcia, SD 19.
Present.
Stephanie Guerrero Signs, SD 20. Jonathan Weisfeld Hinojosa, SD 20.
Present.
Nicholas Hudson, SD 21. Jen Ramos, SD 21. Tom Hanson, SD 22.
Present.
Are there more than one representative from each area?
Hello. Mary Duty, SD 22.
I know she's trying to come in.
Okay. Kathy Neely, SD 23.
Present.
Jeff Strader, SD 23.
Sustaining member.
Jessica Gonzalez, SD 24.
So it's like a little prestige thing when you say sustaining member.
Yeah. What did I say?
Present.
Hello?
Hey, Jonathan Weisfeld, you need to mute.
Jessica Gonzalez, SD 24. Clayton Tucker, SD 24.
Howdy.
Michelle Lo Solis, SD 25. Jesus Toro Martinez, SD 25. Gabriel Rosales, SD 26. Sonia Walker, SD 26. Cynthia Gutierrez, SD 27. Benjamin Whitman, SD 27.
Present.
Sue Barrick, SD 28.
Sustaining member.
David Langston, SD 28.
Present.
Wesley Lawrence, SD 29.
Present.
Judy Lugo, SD 29.
Present.
Glenn Melanson, SD 30.
Present for liberty and justice for all.
Kay Parr, SD 30.
Proxy Glenn Melanson.
Okay. Mike Purcell, SD 31. Suzanne Gentry, SD 31. Larry Davis, County Chairs Association.
Present physically, not sure about mentally.
Winifred Davis Jackson, County Chairs Association. Hannah Horick, Texas Young Democrats. Randall Bryant, Texas Young Democrats. Carol Alvarado, Senate Democratic Caucus. Terry Mesa, House Democratic Caucus.
Present.
Mary Ho, Texas Democratic Women. Daisy Marin, Texas Democratic Women. Candace Matthews, Coalition of Black Democrats, Black Caucus. Carol Robinson, Coalition of Black Democrats, Black Caucus.
Madam Secretary, are you using the roll call, the February 15th one? I think I updated some of the names there. I apologize.
Yes,
Okay, all right.
I am using that one. Is that not up to date?
The one I sent yesterday should be up to date. Let's see here.
It says roll call February 15th, 2024.
Okay. I'll add the correct names at the bottom of this sheet. I'm not sure how that got mixed up. My apologies.
Okay. David Kanchan, Hispanic Caucus.
Present.
Daphne Tenor.
Sustaining member.
Daphne. Okay. Karen Wilkerson, Non-Urban Rural Ag Caucus.
Yes, ma'am. Sustaining member.
David Curry, Non-Urban Rural Ag Caucus. Jessica Cohen, Texas Stonewall
I think
Democrat.
it's a district level delegate, not statewide.
Okay, Logan Workman, Texas Stonewall Democrats. Krista Castaneda, Texas Environmental Democrats. Daniel Ayala, Texas Environmental Democrats.
Present.
Jessica Aniker, Texas Democrats with Disabilities.
Present. Disability Lives Matter.
Andres Lopez, Texas Democrats with Disabilities.
Sustaining member.
Wesley Liu, Asian American Democrats of Texas.
Present.
Nabila Mansour, Asian American Democrats of Texas. Martha Williams, Texas Democratic Veterans.
Sustaining member.
Stephen Spainhauer, Texas Democratic Veterans.
Present.
Naya Jones, Texas College Democrats. Rohit Shehan, Texas College Democrats. Rick Levy, Labor Caucus.
Yo.
Lorraine Montemayor, Labor Caucus.
Present.
Madam
Ash-
Secretary, I've fixed the three errors earlier, and they're all highlighted in red if you want to call those three names again.
Okay. Do you want me to go back or just continue? Go back?
Just go back for rows 79, 80, and 82, and then continue after that, if that's okay, Madam Secretary. Sorry about that.
Vicki Moore, Texas Democratic Women.
Present.
Heidi Gordon, Texas Democratic Women.
Sue Barrick, proxy.
Antron Johnson, Coalition of Black Democrats.
Frederick Nickens, proxy.
Okay. And we are back. Ashley Cheng. Yes.
Madam Secretary, both Linda and Alan Jamail are on Linda Jamail's, if you can mark both of them present.
Got it. Okay, got it. Ashley Cheng, Texas DNC member, AAPI caucus.
Sustaining member.
Rose Salas, Texas DNC member at large.
Sustaining member.
Dennis Spate, Texas DNC member at large.
Sustaining member.
Sophronia Thompson, Texas DNC member, Black Caucus.
Here. Sustaining member.
Royce West, Texas DNC member, Black Caucus. Selena Vasquez, Texas DNC member, Hispanic Caucus.
Sustaining member, now Texas Trailblazer.
Cesar Blanco, Texas DNC member, Hispanic Caucus. Leonard Aguilar, Texas DNC member, Labor Caucus.
I'll speak for the brother.
Okay. Glenn Maxey, Texas DNC member, LGBTQ plus caucus. Vicky Vogel, Texas DNC member, Rural Caucus. Andre Schreiber, Texas DNC member, Youth Caucus. Henry Munoz, DNC.
Sustaining.
Okay. Henry Munoz, DNC vice chair. And Robert Martinez, DNC member, national appointee. Lorraine Miller, Texas DNC member, national appointee. Mary Ho, non-SDEC member of committee. Daisy Marin, non-SDNC member of committee. Jennifer Vick, non-SDNC member of committee. Gary Lynn.
Sustaining member.
Okay. Gary Lynn, non-SDEC member of committee. Cassandra Elaharza, non-SDEC member of committee. Steve Adler, non-SDC member of committee. Kiefer Odell, non-SDC member of committee. George Ibarra, non-SDEC member of committee. Johnny Ruffier, non-SDEC member of committee. Bella Armenta, non-SDEC member of committee. Jessica Perez, non-SDEC member of committee. Justin Parker, non-SDEC member of committee. Michael Apodaca, non-SDC member of committee. Okay. Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum. Hello? Marco?
Yeah, I'm getting a couple of messages in the chat. If people were asking about what the non-SDC members of committees, those are people who are on committees and they're essentially guests of this meeting, but they're either no longer on the SDC or were never on the SDC, but they're a member of, say, the convention committee or rules committee, so on and so forth. Mary Duty's having trouble logging in and she's watching it on our live stream. If you could just mark her present, Madam Secretary, SD22. Let's see here. Vicky Moore from TDW is present. Myra Mills Cheerheart is proxying for Mark Green. If you could mark that down. Vice Chair Wyra Cathy is present. And Ben Whitman from SD 20, I want to say 27, is present but cannot go on voice. Same thing with Mohammed Jazz Ijaz from SD 17 is present but cannot go on chat. And Cheryl Novak, same thing. SD 17 is present but she cannot go on the mic.
Got it.
Okay, well, I think Secretary Forms has stated that there's a quorum present, so we will continue. The agenda consists of only one item of business, the staff work product of the 2024 TDP Call to Convention and State Convention Standing Rules document. Since there is only one item, the agenda does not need approval. I don't think we need any reports of any committees, right? No, okay.
No.
Let's move to that one item. I now recognize Party Business Advisor Marco Orantia to give the presentation on the purpose of our meeting tonight, the document on the 2024 TDP call to convention and state convention standing rules. Marco?
Thank you, Judge. All right. I think the first thing, as I told most members yesterday, is to sort of bring us why we're here. In August of 2023, we met at the third quarter meeting in Fort Worth, and there was an emergency rule that you all passed. And one of the many parts of that emergency rule, which sort of reformatted and reordered and did some reform to the convention processes within the rules. One major thing it did was to essentially take out the administrative / procedural items and move those to a different document, because that is, I guess, more proper with how bylaws and standing rules work. Essentially, bylaws are something, the sort of core of your organization that exists term to term, whereas standing rules, the procedural and administrative items are things that you want to reapprove every term. You get to change and whatnot, administrative stuff. So in that rule change, it said that we would do two different documents. One is a call to convention document, and essentially that's something that the SDEC would approve, that are essentially standing rules, but they're on convention processes. And then in addition to that, and so that's for all conventions from start to finish. And then in addition to that, for the state convention, that there would be a convention standing rule document, something that's much shorter, and sort of, that's the thing where you would have limits on debate. So, and this was the language right here. Hopefully this is readable and large enough for everybody. But this is the language right here that that was in there that essentially y'all authorize for this to happen. So the reason why we're having this meeting now, there's a portion in the election code that says that anything that deals with electoral matters, and of course conventions deal with electoral matters, should be done earlier, no later than 30 days before the first step of the convention process. And our convention process starts on March 23rd at the precinct and county congressional district conventions on Saturday in various locations across the state. So in order to meet that deadline, I think, which is February 22nd, to make sure that's delivered to the Secretary of State, we're taking this meeting now and having this special meeting. By and large, though, this document, even though it's 30 pages long, I think about 28 pages worth of information, is, I'd say maybe about half of it is a copy paste of what was already in the rules already. That's because we wanted to take out all of the administrative procedural stuff and put it in this document. And also, I'd say probably another huge chunk of that, in addition to that half, is things to make it more transparent what the administrative processes of the convention look like. And also, there is a little bit of some new standards, or standards that existed in 2020 or 2016 conventions that are sort of outlined a little bit more clearly, in addition to a couple of new items. By and large, I'll go ahead and open up the little outline right here. You have this registration and eligibility. That's essentially a copy paste from what used to exist in the rules, but there's a couple of new things that are maybe more transparent of what was already done already. For instance, this talks about how the things that are collected in the RSVP form, that way we're able to match people to the voter file for our convention processes, as well as get that information about what are their accessibility needs. Do they need an electric scooter at the state convention? What caucuses are they in? How do they identify? So this just sort of adds a lot of detail to those things. The precinct and county convention section is essentially it just sort of has the order of business here. It's not really new. It's nearly unchanged from what it was in the rules prior to August 2023. This and same for this section, the platform resolution and rules processes, you know, it's just in a little bit of a different form, or combined in a different order. So I think what I'm going to focus on is what I would think members are probably most interested in, and those are the three sections that I highlighted in this note to a staff note to you all. One, it's running for party offices in their elections, so I'd like to go over that first. All right, so it's starting on page 12. This first section is not too new. It's just talking about the filing system and getting a little bit more into the details about how to withdraw. And then it's also, you know, saving this for when we do have gubernatorial, so we don't lose that language. Because obviously this is a presidential convention. This is unchanged as well about how can people be nominated from the floor and where they're not nominated from the floor. And then also identifies people who are able to self-nominate. Elections is probably the portion that sort of got redone, but essentially it's the same. During the congressional district caucuses that we have at convention, for the races that we're able to, we can have a show of hands or a written signed ballot, and the CD chair who's running that caucus still gets to decide. So that's unchanged. This also kind of this is a little bit changed, but essentially just sort of clarifies the process. This is saying how the CD chairs tell you know, the chair or their designee, you know, me as staff, to identify if you guys are voting by paper ballot and when, and, you know, if you guys disagree or if you don't tell us you know, what to do. Now, when you're in your CD caucuses, you have to recess for your presidential preference caucuses. So, you know, an example would be from, you know, 2016 would be, there would be in a CD caucus, there would be the Clinton and there would be the Sanders caucuses that I would have to meet in that room to vote on things, and the things that they would be voting on. And these are done by paper ballots, would be the presidential preference caucus as well as the national delegates. This talks about how that written ballots for instant runoff voting, as well as electronic ballots for any of the four committees that we're now electing electronically, are done by instant runoff. And this also outlines I think a new process to help facilitate maybe some flaws in the past about the custodian of those counted ballots, and how there is a review process. I know that at this last in-person convention, there were people that wanted to, after, you know, ballots were counted for a race and that data was inputted, they wanted a recount, or they wanted to review the ballots either at the convention or post-convention. So this outlines a little bit more of the process. So that's something that's new. This section about retaining the ballots for 60 days, that's actually a rule that got passed earlier in the term, but now it's essentially it's a procedural thing, so that's why it's put in here. So I'll go ahead and pause to see if there's any questions generally before I move to the two other highlighted sections, if you guys have any questions about any of the content. I see two things in the chat. Okay, they're not questions. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and move to this one, which I think the next two are quite more interesting.
Marco,
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I do apologize. Yeah. So we're all going to share the rooms, right? A particular CD may not have the room in the morning. It may be a different time period, right? There's a bit of that going on.
I mean, yes and no. So right now, and this isn't necessarily outlined or said anywhere here, but this was talked about at the SDEC meeting and Fort Bend. Because of the amount of rooms that are available at the El Paso Convention Center, as well as us going from 31 to 38 districts, we're going to have to go in different groupings for our CD caucus business. So if I remember from off the top of my head, there will be a grouping of about a third of the congressional districts that'll meet at 10:30 a.m. and then another grouping, and then we'll have a 15-minute break after 90 minutes. And then the next grouping will start at 12:45. That'll go 90 minutes, 15-minute break. And then the last one, I think, at 2 o'clock. Does that sound right? Yes. Yeah.
So I apologize.
Yeah, go ahead.
My tactical question is then, so to get the paper ballots, is there some kind of process where, you know what I mean, we go and get all that stuff before we go to our room? And we wouldn't want to,
yes.
We don't do it in the morning necessarily. I guess we could and tote them around all day, but so you'll let us know, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I think traditionally how that's been handled, and this isn't outlined here in these procedures, but traditionally, Thursday or Friday morning, those CD chairs or that CD chair, obviously because you're at least a 2-member team by that point, we'll pick up those paper ballots, or we could still be the custodian for them, and y'all pick them up in the morning, because there's only gonna be a third of the CDs that are starting at 10:30 then.
Right.
Now, one thing why I said yes and no at the very beginning is I think during the first and the second iteration, not during the last, because that we want to give more time for stage prep. There are going to be some of the smaller CDs to account for the sound, and it's just something we have to do. It's not something we want to do preferably, but we're just for space wise, we're going to have to use the general session, the main floor. I think for 4 of the caucuses, but I think the ones that we targeted in particular are the ones that we estimate to be the 8 smallest caucuses of the convention. Obviously, after April 15th, we'll find out who those what the actual delegate count is of state delegates. Of course, that doesn't mean that's the amount that's actually going to show up. So we could technically, reconfigure if needed. But I think, more than likely those 8 that we identified will have to share, basically go to 4 different corners of the hall and of the main hall and conduct their congressional district caucus. So yes, people will have one room, but they will have to those 8, 4 at the 10:30 time frame, and then 4 at the 12:45 time frame will have to be in the main hall in 4 corners of the room. And then the other thing, this I would assume with the way things are going is a little bit easier than, let's say, a 2016 or a 2008, because if in your congressional district there's a presidential candidate that gets past 15% of the vote, that or those presidential candidates get to have a presidential preference caucus at your inside your congressional district caucus. So if you look at 2008, then that would vary from 3 candidates depending on the CD. 2016, that's probably two candidates in every CD or nearly every CD. In 20, even though we did it virtually, if that was in person, it varied from 4. There were 5 candidates that made it past the 15% mark. So
Wow.
now, the way this is looking, the way the polls are looking, I think probably there's only one candidate at this point that makes it past the 15% mark. But regardless, they have to have listed that as their presidential preference when they've RSVP'd or when they checked in. So if someone says, I have no preference, then that person cannot participate in that caucus. They can participate in your CD caucus, but they can't participate in the presidential preference caucus for said candidate.
All right. Well, thank you. We're starting to get the idea, but there'll be a lot going on at the same time. But thanks.
Fully. All right. So this section just sort of outlines some of the administrative procedures for the committees. The committees' times that they're going to meet aren't necessarily set in here, especially when it comes to the temporary committees, but it gives a general time of when they'll start to meet. Credentials committee, I think once the chair does appoint, will sort of be my best buddies, because they're going to help out a lot with oversight in my process for list administration, and probably even be helpful to sort of facilitating that. There's 314 different lists that are sent out to the counties and CDs that have to be maintained, and then of course all of those need to be combined afterwards. So it's a lot of work, and I do want a little bit of someone checking my work and making sure that I'm doing the correct things. So credentials temporary will be my buddies, and that's why it says as soon as they're appointed, they'll meet at some time before March 23rd. And just as a reminder, that's a 15-member body. All of them are appointed by the state chair, and he gets to appoint the 3 officers: chair, vice chair, and secretary, and then the 12 other members. Temporary platform. This says that once they're essentially appointed, that they and these also are 100% appointed by the state chair. There's subject matter experts, as well as party activists and SDEC members. That they should start their work actually before this convention. The idea is they take the 2022 platform and edit what they think they need. And then after our county and congressional district conventions finish, there are items that come up as resolutions that are identified for the platform, or maybe someone puts in a resolution or a rule change that is actually more appropriate to be a platform. So that would get referred to this temporary committee, and then they would review to see if they want to, potentially put any of those things that come from the grassroots into the platform. So again, they're starting to meet once appointed before the 23rd, but then afterwards they'll still need to meet and eventually hand off their work to the permanent platform committee. Both temporary resolutions and rules, because we have to wait until the county congressional district conventions actually happen to get all of those resolutions. We'll meet afterwards, and it makes sense for resolutions to meet prior to, because resolutions will refer things out to rules and platform. Permanent committees generally, we did change the rules in August so that these 4 permanent committees, credentials, platform, resolutions, and rules, are going to be elected electronically prior to the convention. That way they have a work product. The expectation is 5 to 10 days before the convention or earlier. That way you'll never have a delegate again saying, what are we voting on? Because they would have been posted online, at least 5 days prior. So that time period is April 27th to the 30th, and it'll be done in the same manner that you all approved. That's similar to the 2020 convention online. So it's going to be essentially a 3-day vote online. So they just have to be a state delegate to be able to be online, and state delegate, and they'll be able to vote. And this is recognizing that other than the credentials committee, because the permanent credentials committee will need to meet, after they get handed off their work from the temporary committee, this 41 member body, all of these are 41 member bodies because it's 38 members from the congressional districts, and then 3 appointees by the chair, who are the officers, chair, first vice chair, and secretary. And so, all of these committees will start doing their work as soon as possible after elected on the 30th. So, we'll get those meetings scheduled. They'll be on Zoom. There'll be public meetings. I think the credentials committee is really going to be sort of the worker bees of the convention. Not only prior to are they going to help out with list administration, but they'll also and oversight of work of list administration. They'll also receive training to execute a couple of different duties that I'll go over in a second, but not limited to at the state convention. So we're really going to put the credentials committee to work to help facilitate things. Permanent credentials committee, I was actually just talking about that. Some of the tasks that they'll do at the state convention is check in and check out. I know, probably there's some members not thrilled about this, but we're just, we're using the space that we have. We're not going to be able to have 38 booths for each congressional districts. There's just not the space. So we're going to have check-in in some other manner. So credentials will help with check-in. And so it'll be a little bit different of a system than you all are used to at an in-person convention. But there's simply just not the room. Can't make that happen. So they'll be doing that. Also, y'all approved to expand the proxy process in August of 2023. And so the way that you guys expanded it is that if someone is in person in El Paso and they check in, but let's say, and I'm a perfect example. I'm busy doing other stuff. I can't go to my CD caucus. I can't be with my delegation on the floor to vote. I can write either a qualified, which qualified I actually tell you how I want to vote, or I can write an unqualified proxy, give that to someone that has to be filled out appropriately and filed. And so that way, when my CD caucus is going on, me as a delegate, I'm able to vote for who I want to vote for. And if I know that there's floor votes that are coming up, I can make that happen. And so that way I don't lose out on my vote and I'm a delegate there. And of course, this happens for other people. I think one of the prime reasons why we did it is there were a lot of issues of the committees that were meeting at the convention last time, wanting to come and vote in the state chair's race. And so they were stopped doing what they were doing. And, and then they said, we won't start until this time. But, when they had quorum, they started anyway. And so it was sort of like an accessibility matter, because some of these people, may have had, mobility issues or something like that, getting to and from. So this is basically says, if you have to work in a committee, which I think the credentials committee and then our 2 nominations committees / presidential preference recommendation committee, they're going to be doing work that Saturday. Rules, platform, and resolutions, I think, unless there's some sort of emergency situation, will not be meeting at convention because they'll have their final work product prior to at least 5 days prior to the convention. So they won't be an issue necessarily for them, but for those committees that are meeting, it behooves them to sign a proxy. That way, when they're missing from their delegation or their caucus, or let's say the caucus is in the morning, if there's some sort of vote, like a Black caucus, Labor caucus, rural caucus, et cetera, that someone's able to vote. But again, that person has to be checked in. So it's going to be important to have, all that documentation, data entered online and accessible. And that way, if people are able to vote a proxy, that their vote, is counted. So we're going to need the help of the Credentials Committee on that. I also referenced earlier how there was an issue at this last convention about being able to review ballots or any sort of recounts. So I think the Credentials Committee will help out with that. And also, kind of being runners if there's some sort of communication that needs to go out that, is going out electronically, but maybe some sort of, physical communication or verbal communication one-on-one is appropriate. They would be tasked with that. So I think the idea is to really utilize this large committee to be sort of the worker bees of the convention. So it's going to be a really important job. The next bucket is the other three committees, platform, resolution, and rules. Essentially a lot of that stuff's already outlined in the rules, so it doesn't really go into super crazy detail. And a lot of the stuff that would be outlined in procedures is kind of already outlined over here in the permanent committees generally. Presidential Preference Recommendation committees. Again, this is based on the outcome of the March 5th primary. Does how many presidential candidates make it past 15% in statewide and also in a congressional district? So anyone that makes it past that bar will have a presidential preference committee. So that could be, that could just be one, it could just be President Biden, or if there's any, even if someone just passes in one congressional district, they will have a presidential preference committee. But if in that scenario, if just one passes, then that committee is a member of one, plus the three appointees by the chair, because he gets to name the chair, vice chair, and secretary. Before I move on to nominations committee at-large delegates, which is the first of the two nominations committee, I see that Jessica Anneker has raised her hand. Jessica?
Yeah, I just want clarification. With proxies, when can somebody actually in and of itself use a proxy? And who can use them? The reason why I'm asking this question is because there's going to be multiple caucuses meeting. Is somebody going to be able to hand a proxy to somebody else attending to proxies, or is that specifically for the CD elections?
There's actually some language that I'm going to go forward about that. Do you mind if I answer that question when we get there?
Yes, I just
So
had
it's
that
less
question.
confusing. Yeah,
Yes.
that's a really good question. All right, so in fact, because I'm doing that, let me go ahead and open up the rules and get to the proxy portion, because that will be very illustrative. Let's see here. It's going to be in general for convention. Maybe it's just state convention. State convention proxies. Here we go. Okay. Got that primed for later. Okay. Nominations committee at-large delegates. Again, we do not vote on members of the nominations committee for at-large delegates. And technically it's at-large delegates and pleos and alternates. So basically all the statewide that aren't the automatic delegates. Automatic delegates are your DNC members and your members of Congress. And the other bucket that I didn't say, the fifth bucket, is the district level national delegates that you guys elect in your CD presidential preference caucuses. So the nomination committee for at-large delegates deals with the at-large delegates, the automatic delegates, and the at-large delegates, the pleos, and the alternate delegates. They're going to meet an hour after the presidential preference committee. You do not vote on this committee, but they are the makeup of this body is whoever is in a presidential preference committee. So basically, this committee just moves over to becoming the nominations committee. And if there's multiple then you know, for instance, 2020, you know, there was a Sanders and there was a Biden, and they just combined at the end. So this meets an hour later. These two committees work hand in hand with the presidential campaigns who have made it past that 15% mark in any of the congressional districts or statewide. You know, all of the work that's done is really outlined in the delegate selection plan. All right, so nominations committee DNC. This is the one I think I'm going to go over very slowly. So this committee also meets at 8 a.m. And where they sort of get a lot of their stuff in the rules, if you want to look in the rules, is these two articles. It's the constituency and interests caucuses of the state convention, or constituency and interests caucuses article, as well as the or subsection, as well as the elections and national committee member subsection of the state convention article in the TDP rules. All right. This one I think is really important. Number 2, because we don't necessarily have, well, we had some language that was very prescriptive in 2020, but this helps. You know, again, these rules are supposed to be procedural, administrative sort of things. So administrating the form for filing is really, really important. So this is very, very helpful to outline that you know, the state party, you know, that we have authorization to take filings for this. So filing will open for this no later than March 15th. That's March 25th. That's 2 days after the county and congressional district convention. And then the filing shall open for DNC members at large, as well as for the following caucuses. And these are the caucuses that have had DNC members in the past, either where it was prescribed by the 2020 rules that existed at that time, or where it wasn't prescribed in 2016 under you know, more of a general person's agreement. Black, Hispanic, labor, youth, non-urban, ag/rural, aka neuro, Stonewall, the LGBTQIA caucus, the Asian American Pacific Islander, aka API caucus. So this is basically saying that people can file for those. This also, I think, is important. It's the same deadline that is there for national delegates. I think this is important, one, for vetting purposes. You know, presidential campaigns do vet, you know, people who file for national delegates. You know, I think that's appropriate for them, you know, deciding who our presidential, you know, who our presidential nominee is. So that's why there's that 30-day deadline, and same thing for people who are serving on our national committee. Now this I think is helpful. You know, you can't have someone, I mean, someone who runs for everything is probably not going to be successful anyway. But what this sentence is saying, myself, you know, I could probably, if I wanted to run for DNC, run for Hispanic, Stonewall, veteran. Oh, well, I guess the veteran's not one of them, but I could run for 3 of those. This is saying that if you're going to run for DNC, that's fine, but you have to choose which of the caucuses that you want to run for, and you can also run for at large. So essentially, you can only run for 2, but you can't run for 2 caucuses, if that makes sense. So that's sort of something that's limiting, that sort of helps the sort of boundaries of this stuff. All right, next is 3. This, you know, right now, if you go to our rules, it says that any delegate can make a recommendation. This sort of just clarifies that caucuses, state delegates, groups of delegates, and any other qualified Democrats can make recommendations to this committee for the list of, and this is the first time you see this anywhere, 12 DNC members. For those of y'all who you know, didn't see it announced or didn't hear it announced at a meeting or you know, via email, we did get an increase in DNC member allocation that will essentially we get to vote on for this state convention, that will be in effect once our new DNC members are seated, past this national convention. So we have an increase from 11 to 12. So that's the first time you're going to see 12 anywhere in the rules is right here. So this next sentence essentially gives the ability for the state chair or designees such as myself to advise the caucuses on what their procedure should be, what are their limitations with our rules. That way, when they're executing their caucuses or any type of voting or any type of recommendation election, I'm able to advise them on matters. Delegates may utilize the proxy process for casting in-person ballots for DNC member caucus recommendations as outlined in TDP rules article. Well, I'll show you right now what that article is. So it's Article G. All right, so what I'm highlighting here, 1 and 2, this is the old proxy process that still exists. Essentially, if there is no one that is from a county, that county can write something and it be filed appropriately and give their entire county's proxy to someone. So this happens, often at conventions, maybe about 3 or 4 counties. They're aware of this process. They know that no one from their county is able to go. They write the appropriate form. They send it in, and then whoever it is, they say has a proxy, whether that's qualified, meaning that I want you to vote this way for my county delegation, or just a general unqualified proxy. They're able to do that. That's not new. This is an old thing. The other old item of proxy is if you're the last if you are the last remaining delegate in a county delegation. So I think there's a famous example that someone has told me about Cameron County, maybe in 2006, is that counties like Cameron County or like El Paso County, when they have to travel in or bus in, and they bus in their entire convention or their entire delegation, but they got to leave at 3 or they got to leave at 2, and they can't stay on the floor. So everyone's gone. That last person can fill out a form and say, hey, we're gone. I'm assigning so-and-so our county delegation strength. So that's not new. The type that is new, that this new, that's referred to in the call to convention for the caucuses for DNC member recommendation, is the example I gave earlier, is if you check in at the convention, essentially this is saying if there's anything going on at the convention in any type of caucus or on the floor, so that's CD caucus or in-person caucus, if there's any type of vote that's going on, not if there's a caucus that is doing things prior to a convention electronically, that is not eligible for a proxy, because the idea is if something's electronic, you would be able to do that online. You would be able to access that. And so if something's in person, you're able to have a proxy for that DNC member recommendation, that SDEC member, whether in a whether in the Hispanic caucus or whether in CD 10, right? Or if you're on the floor and you just can't be on the floor for floor votes, but you are in El Paso, checked in, you can give that proxy. Does that answer your question, Jessica?
That actually wasn't my understanding of the original vote, because of the issue that somebody may be, because I know somebody may just check in, then check out, and it allows almost to have because there's been issues in caucuses where somebody gives a whole bunch of proxies and just basically allows somebody to just take over the election.
Do you want to just get off mute? All right. So, give me a second. I think Dino was going to say something here.
So it only works for this new kind of proxy if the delegate remains checked in. The older two things, those are existing, but they can leave and have checked out. That's only in the CDs and on the floor. That is not in caucuses.
Okay.
But for caucuses, for any other purposes, if they remain checked in, then they can give their proxy. It is to assist people who need to be in two places at once.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, this I think is important. Oh, Jennifer, did you want to say something?
Really quick. So I want to make sure I understand this for accommodation's sake, because I've had a lot of questions about this. So if they need to check out to go to the quiet room or because of a disability.
That's not check out. Check out means I'm not coming back to the convention. If I'm going to my hotel, if I'm going to go have dinner, if I'm, going to go to this booth, that's not checking out. Checking out is see you later. I'm not coming back. Does that make sense?
Yes. So like if I needed to go take time in the quiet room, I could appoint somebody as a proxy on the floor for me, correct?
Yeah, but that would have to be filed appropriately, and like we'll have a very thorough procedure and get all the credentials committee to help out with that and inform the caucus leaders, the CD chairs, delegation chairs, et cetera, how that works. But yes. Okay. This one I really, really love, especially going through the experience of the 2020 convention, because, as someone that's helping these committees run, knowing what's going on these rules, I sort of know this stuff's going to happen, but your average voter or your average caucus goer may not understand why things may need to happen. Essentially, gender balancing needs to happen. So I think this is really important to sort of lay out and be transparent what the process is for caucus recommendations. So caucuses recommending one member shall provide the name of the primary nominee and a backup nominee of a different gender identity than the primary to allow the committee to balance the delegation. The primary nominee is the person who received the most votes, and the backup nominee is the person of a different gender that received the next highest amount of votes. So essentially what this is, in my advising as the state chair wants me to, as me as a designee, when we're advising the caucuses that have had, traditionally one member represent them, what they should do is when they're voting, just like we did in 2020, we have a vote, someone gets the most votes, but then whoever the person who's next in the vote total, who's of a different gender, that person is automatically the backup. So what that's saying is you have one of one gender, one of a different gender for those caucuses when they go and get recommended to the nominations DNC committee. So that way, if it's really imbalanced, like let's say it's 4 males and 8 females, there's definitely going to need to be at that point some of the backups selected, and that's just sort of the job of the nominations committee, is to make a recommendation on what the balance is. Again, the nomination committee does not decide that, the floor decides that. So if the floor wants to amend the list in any way, they can. They will be limited, and I'll go over that later. But yeah, I think this is really important, so we don't have a lot of hurt feelings when we go through the process, and we do need a gender balance. And of course, if there's any non-binary, then that also changes the scenario too. Because then at that point, let's say there's one non-binary person that gets selected out of this group, then essentially we're balancing. We can either have 5 male or 6 female, or 6 female or 5 male. So that's sort of the committee's duty, is to make a recommendation on what the balance should be. So I think this is a really important, because it's essentially what the committee had to do anyway, but this is laying it out so that everyone knows what the ground rules are, and no one gets too mad about it when they know what the rules are. Okay, this next one I think is important. I'll call this one sort of like the majority protection. So 3 seats shall be selected by the at-large shall be selected at large by the nominations committee. I'll put a little parentheses for branding. Okay, so with this saying, we had 2 at-large seats. This is saying that there will be 3 at-large seats, but I think it's important because the majority of the caucuses, those are all, mostly minorities. So here there is a little bit of a majority protection, because it's saying at least 2 of those seats shall be of a different gender. So basically a fourth of our delegation is going to be at large, and at large essentially represents the entirety of the convention, the entirety of the party. Candidates who are eligible for at-large DNC member have to be those who filed. So again, just like everything, there's that 30-day deadline, because we need to know, one, people want to know who they're running against, but we don't want someone to run from the floor and then them turn out to have like a really bad background and something like that. So that's why this is there. All right, 8, 9, and 10 I think are very interesting, because these are more of a minority protection. So if further balancing is needed, the nominations committee may have to utilize the backup nominee from one or more caucuses. This gives them the ability, or it's telling them, it's prescribing them that if they need to still balance, that they can balance. The committee may not select someone to represent a caucus that was not the primary or the backup nominee from the caucus. I think this is really important for caucus rights and minority rights, because it's saying, we took a vote as a caucus, we're recommending this person as our primary, this person as our backup. So y'all can choose one or the other. Y'all can't choose someone else for us, because that's not our choice. And that's protection, because the people who are voting on this is the majority. It's the people from the 38 districts. And then it's the ones who actually approve it is the convention, the majority. So this is important for the minority protection. 10 is very similar to 8. It's just saying that the convention, if they're going to change the list at all, an example is, let's say there's one person of one gender that was recommended by the nominations committee for AAPI. Well, the convention, once they receive that report, is going to be limited to only change that one person from, let's say that person was a primary to the backup, or vice versa. So this is sort of I think an important protection of minority rights, something that's new, but it really, really helps the, it doesn't do the nominations committee's work for them, but it helps them along the way, and is much more fair and gives a couple of protections. Number 9 is the only one I skipped over. But the convention committee, or the convention body, so the general session, once they receive the report of the 12 recommendations from DNC members, so it's limiting the nominations committee to only make those 12 recommendations, they can only amend those, essentially what we're saying here, 3 at-large members, with any person who has filed in advance for the at-large seat. So this is saying, again, there is a deadline to file for all of these. It's the 30 days in advance. And if you're going to select someone other, you have to follow all these rules. but you can't just put in anybody who hasn't filed, or else that, that would be out of order. Mr. Melanson.
Yes, so in this section, is there a rule about random order for taking these seats? Because what can happen is the committee chair can set the order and, for example, pick all 10 or all 5 of the male slots, leaving the rest of the positions to go to secondary slots if that's the way they fall out. So my question is there a rule in here that requires random ordering in this nominations process, or can the chair of this particular caucus with a small group of people set the agenda to control and prevent the secondaries from actually rising to the top of certains?
Yeah, that's actually, I'm really glad you asked that question. Am I on mute? I can't tell. I'm unmuted. Okay, cool. Oh, and if someone, I just approved Senator West's Zoom, so if someone could let him know that he's cool to get in now. Order. I know that in the past the committee worked a certain way. I do want to underline that order kind of matters, but it kind of does not matter. Because there is the motion for reconsideration. Yeah, the committee report isn't final. So an example is, let's say, you choose me to be on the list, then you go to the next thing, and it's like, well, actually, you know what? Our report isn't final. We haven't finished all our work. We haven't submitted it to convention. So actually, let's take Marco off and put Glenn instead. So order, I can see how order may matter, but it also doesn't matter because you can always reconsider something that you previously did. Does that make sense?
It does, but it sort of leaves it up to chance whether someone at the moment is going to realize what's going on, and still leaves the ability of the chair of the committee to manipulate the order and then sort of say, well, we ran out of time. We don't have time to reconsider and rush things through. I mean, I'm just talking practically, but if there's a rule in here that says the committee will take positions randomly, by draw of the hat, then that prevents anyone from manipulating the order to sort of stack the deck right off the bat.
I get what you're saying. I think just to, in the end, also, you're going to still have to balance. So you're still going to have to look at the entirety of everything. I think, one, the way this is worded is at-large is going to be just like at-large has always been prior to 2020, other than saying one should be of one gender, one should be of the other, is they're going to have to run at that committee. Those 38 members, were elected by their CDs. We don't want to make this, committee not have any type of real job. That's one of their duties, is to select who are the 3 best people who we're going to recommend to the convention to choose at large. And then, they're going to have a list of, 2 from Black, 2 from Hispanic, and the 5 other caucuses, a primary and a backup. So they're going to, basically see right at the top of the bat, okay, it looks with the 9 that we have that it's, let's just have a scenario where we don't have let's have a scenario where the LGBTQ person is not of a binary gender. So let's say they're trans. So at that point, we remove that person from the equation when trying to balancing. So if you don't have to balance Black and Hispanic, because that's going to be one of one gender, one of the other. So really what you're looking at is 4 now. Is that male, female, male, female? At that point, you're balanced. So if you're going to your at large, then the decision's really easy. We know that one's going to be a one gender, one's going to be the other. And then our at-large is that 12th at-large is not going to matter. But that's one scenario, right? There could be a scenario where the primary for the ones might be all female. So I don't think, to me, just knowing that you have to sort of know what those outcomes are, I don't know if it's the greatest idea to put some sort of random or some sort of order when it's not going to matter anyway, because you can always go back and change something. But I totally get what you're saying, and hear that feedback. All right, I know that was a lot, and this is really important to this group. Is there any other great questions about anything nominations committee DNC? Anything that didn't make sense? All right, I'm going to go to, I think, the next portion, and I'll be a lot quicker with this one. Standing rules. Y'all approved convention standing rules. And actually, I clarified this a little bit earlier today. State convention standing rules. So this one is nearly a copy paste from the last convention. This is just saying that the committees or the state chair or their designees can make non-substantive changes. So essentially clerical changes for reformatting, spelling, grammar, resolution structure, et cetera, to help facilitate the process. And you don't have to, necessarily do an amendment in motion and everything. So that is something that y'all approved last time with, some slight changes in there. This one is mostly what y'all approved for the last convention regarding consent calendars. I think the thing that I wanted to highlight, because we're dealing with lists at this convention that we weren't necessarily dealing with at the last convention. Lists that, since we have to ratify that come as motions from the committees, the nominations at large and the nominations DNC. So I wanted to outline that consent calendars are not lists. They're two different things. Now, consent calendars, we're going to have essentially two different types when we go to the convention. They're the ones that came before. They're the ones that the three committees that are going to report something at least 5 days out. So those consent calendars are, set. So really, the consent calendars that we're going to be dealing with are I guess there's none that we'll be dealing with. They'll all be lists at the convention. Yeah. So if anyone wants to remove something from a consent calendar, it's not as simple as one member, since there's thousands of delegates. So you do have the opportunity, and we'll provide a form for a petition. There's other petition types. So 1% of all delegates currently is checked in. And I think that'll be 50, 75, 100 people, something like that. Yeah, so it's not that hard, but still, if you want to remove something from the consent calendar for discussion, you do need that. And then the same thing with any lists. Names can be struck in place of the request of any delegates by notifying the. There'll be a process for notifying, and again, another 1%. And this is like, if something's coming out of one of the nominations committee, you will be given a 30-minute advance notice of, this is the list that's coming out for the nominations committee before we actually move to discussion. That way, if you need to gather those 30, 50, 75 signatures to do that, you have that ability. Credentials committee will assist in this process. I know we went over that a little bit earlier, how they're going to assist in a couple of different things. They're going to be the worker bees. And then how, items not removed from the consent calendar will be adopted by general consent. This is outlining any motion from striking a name from a list should be someone that's eligible. Again, if someone didn't file for at-large DNC, but you're trying to replace an at-large DNC with someone that didn't file, that's out of order, so that would not be proper. This is to outline the lists that are ineligible for debate or amendment. So basically anyone that's on the committees and then members of the SDEC, they just are, you have no choice to approve them. It's more of a, yeah, it's a state election of code requirement. The lists that are eligible for debate are going to be national delegate lists, not including the nomination of the automatic delegates, which, you know, you can't change. You can't change your members of Congress or your DNC members that already are DNC members for this term. But everyone else you can strike and replace if you wanted to in an amendment, and it has to be someone that's eligible. And then we already went over the DNC recommendations, and then our electors and alternate electors, which I want to say will probably come out of the chair's report. That's from your congressional districts. Does anyone have any questions about that? This just says committee reports, kind of like what I went over earlier, is needs to be available 30 minutes prior if they're meeting at convention. So, you know, that's the two nominations committees. It's that list of 12, or it's all the at-large delegates. We're going to give you at least 30 minutes to look at it before it's even brought up for discussion. This is, I think, an improvement from last conventions. Is we're going to give you an expected time of when we think the report is, but know that, you know, y'all have to be semper gumby and be a little bit flexible. So, yeah, we'll list times for when things will happen, but know that that could get moved around. This one, I think, is just a little bit changed from the last convention. I know the SDEC has something very similar for their standing rules of order. So any floor debates on a motion is 3 for, 3 against. The first speaker shall be the person who make the motion or the designee, and speaking in the affirmative. And then on amendments, so basically the next higher level, and of course, it's also the amendments to the amendments, the last level, can have 2 for and 2 against. The only exception, and I think this is in regards to striking and replacing someone from a list, is we're going to add speakers. So the first speaker, if they are the person being, or they are the person being struck, the person who is trying to be the replacement, because essentially you're trying to vote for that amendment, for that amendment, for that person to be it, they would be the first speaker, and then second would be the person that they're trying to strike from that list. And again, this would be for electors, alternate electors, any sort of national delegate that's not automatic, and then your DNC member recommendations. And then we go to the 2 for, 2 against, because that's an amendment to a motion that came from committee. All speakers are limited to 1 minute speaking unless until time expended by the majority vote of the body. I think that is about it. Any further questions on any of these standing rules? All right, 1 second. All right, thank you, members. Mr. Chair, the staff's work product of the 2024 TDP call to convention and the state convention standing rules is now officially presented to the body. It is recommended that a member makes a motion to approve it so that the body may move to discussion. And then in this instance, it does require a second. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Marco. I'm not sure, did you already say somebody moved to accept the report?
I will. To approve it.
Boland.
All right. We have a motion to accept the report. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Chair, Steve Spainhour will second to approve the TDP call to convention and state convention standing rules.
And I was Boland de Castro.
Right. Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve the 2020 TDP call to convention and state convention standing rules. Is there any discussion on that motion?
Mr. Chair, I believe Hannah Horick wanted to speak in favor first.
Okay, that's fine. Hannah?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to hit a couple of highlights just to say thank you to the staff and say that I'm advocating for folks to support this because I think it delineates all of the existing practices that we have been using and just really increases our transparency and understanding for both candidates for offices and for delegates participating. It also allows for greater participation in the committee work, which I'm really excited about. I know we've heard great feedback from youth. And then this really just also helps ensure the delegates have information in a timely manner. I just want to hit a couple of highlights.
What the hell?
Okay, well, if somebody's got their or not me, just so you can finish.
All right, everyone else is muted. Hannah, if you want to unmute.
I'm good. Could y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Okay. So is there anyone that wishes to speak against the motion? All right. If there is no one wishing to speak against the motion, let's go ahead and call for a vote on the motion. All those in favor of accepting the 2024 TDP call to convention or approving the 2024 TDP call to convention and state convention standing rule signify by stating aye.
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 All those opposed?
Aye.
All those opposed state nay. All right,
Well,
motion carries. Okay, I guess that completes our business for today. Thank you so much for attending this special meeting. I want to thank Marco for the detailed and exhaustive explanation of the rules. You don't have to when he gives them to you, but it helped, I think, everyone to understand what's going on. He and Dina spent a lot of time along with the rest of the staff putting together these rules to make them as transparent as possible so people would have a comfort level at the convention. And I want to tell him how much we appreciate his hard work and Dina's hard work in putting this together, as well as the rest of the members of the staff that worked on that. And so we're looking forward to this convention in June. We are getting a great response. Everybody used to talk about how far they were going to have to drive or fly to El Paso, but I'm hearing more and more that people are excited. We're going to have a great convention, and we're looking forward to seeing all of y'all then. So you all have if you do drive up there, have a safe drive, and we'll see you up there. Thank you very much. And do I hear a motion to adjourn?
motion. Belinda.
Motion in a second. All those in favor signify by stating aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. Good night, everybody.
Good job, Marco.
Good job, Marco.
Right.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you, members.
Marco.
Hey, thank you, Dina.
Night.
Thank you, Dina.
Oh, yeah, Tina.